This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Welcome to Five Questions, Joey.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
How did your father influence you to become a singer and entertainer growing up, and what advice did he offer you?
Just watching my dad. When my dad was, he was in theater arts. He loved to perform. When I was in Catholic school in New York City, I actually was doing these plays because in the Catholic school in the community to raise money for the church, my dad would do kind of like these plays and stuff like that, and do like about movies or music and all these kind of made up kind of things, and people really came to it. So I just kind of grew up in the entertainment, I guess, stuff. My dad wasn't like really big or anything, but he did a lot of stuff that was just singing, dancing, and I kind of just grew up around it. And a lot of the advice that my dad, just kind of, or things that he taught me was just, as far as just like singing and holding a note or, listen to this, little simple things. As I got older, obviously I learned, went to high school, went to college, and not college, went to high school. And then I became an NSYNC, which was interesting. But he just was always just musically inclined and always just had music around. I think that's something that absorbed in me, I guess.
Yeah, and it's good to have a role model like that, especially, following in his footstep, but also making it your own and standing out from him. And I think that's great, especially when you're young and so many parents are like, don't get into the arts. There's no money
Right.
there. And to have a parent that's really championing you and being a role model and showing you what's possible is enormously valuable. And NSYNC creator Lou Pearlman was convicted of fraud over a decade ago. What lessons did you learn from working with him that have shaped how you manage your career today?
Don't try to triple and triple dip into everything, because that's what he did. And he made, a huge Ponzi scheme. But the crazy thing about it was he was actually making legitimate money and then became greedy. I don't understand that. And that's one of the rules I've always learned: share the wealth. If we all eat together, we'll all work and make together. No reason to try to scam or scheme on somebody else. You know what I mean? It's like, if we all eat, we all eat. If we don't eat, we don't all eat. So it's like, let's all do this together. And that's something that I've learned, obviously. His mind went from formulas. So if you can make a boy band here, you can make a boy band there. And it kind of holds true. I mean, obviously you have BTS and all these other groups that over the few years, it will kind of cycle through, in a sense, of circle of life in the boy band realm. It'll come back around, so you got the BTS, you got all these other groups that are out there. So I think one of those things is, make sure to do a Ponzi scheme. That's one of them.
Yeah, I actually learned something similar in my early 20s when I interviewed George Foreman, and his best piece of career advice back then is create win-win mutualistic relationships, because if someone feels like they're getting less in the agreement, that eventually will not last that long. And so if you want to create good relationships, family relationships, friend relationships, business partnerships, then try and think about how you can make the other person win and not just what's in it for you. And I think that's super important advice. Your show is called your show is called Common Knowledge, but a lot of common knowledge is not common. And I'm sure you'd agree with that. And that's what makes the show educational and entertaining. What is one piece of common knowledge that you expect your fans to know about your career, and one piece of uncommon knowledge?
One piece of common knowledge: to know what you see is what you get. That's me. I don't sugarcoat anything. People are like, oh, because sometimes obviously the voice is a little more like, hey, this, that. But I'm like, hey, I'm not like, I'm cheese, but I'm real cheese. I'm not, and I'm messing around with you. It's not like I'm trying to be so cheesy that it's so fake. That's one thing I never portrayed. I never portrayed to be like somebody I'm not. I'm not like this artist that's going to be all mystical and stuff like, oh, I'm like, Lady Gaga. She had some sort of a gimmick, but a great one at that. I'm not that, so I think what you see is what you get. Something that's uncommon, gosh, it really stinks, because I am some sort of an open book. I mean, the uncommon thing is things that probably don't notice is always life in general. There's always trials and tribulations, even right now, just craziness where I'm actually moving out of one house into another, but I'm working on top of that. So I got to make sure nothing goes missing. And then I got to make sure that, people are wrapping up stuff and then moving to the house, which I still haven't even found another house yet to buy. So, it's normal things, I think, that people don't really know what's on. That's, I guess, uncommon about me is I'm normal like everybody else. I take my kid to school when I'm home. I take my kid to school every morning. I'm up at 5:45 in the morning when I have her for the week. I get up, I take her, I get her lunch, I do all this stuff, and do normal things throughout the day. So I think that's, people just think I just lounge around and hang out. But yeah, I'm usually working.
Yeah, going back to what you said earlier too, it's if you're just yourself, it makes life much easier because if you're always playing a character, eventually with our world of social media, people will catch you out of character, and that'll be really hard to keep up
Yeah.
and continue.
And I think that's what you're seeing a lot of times on social media and on Instagram. People are these kind of people like, oh my gosh, you're so crazy. And then after a while, it's getting tiresome. And then they start to just like either become themselves like, wait a minute, that's not the way they were before. It's interesting. Yeah.
And it's hard to keep that up. Like if when you're like 70 years old, to keep the
Oh my
same
God.
gimmick up, you're exhausted. You just don't even have the energy for it.
Yeah.
And how is being in a music group and appearing in TV shows and movies prepare you to host your own show?
Just I think just the repetition, the constant, for me, for common knowledge, I'm constantly reading prompters all day long, and I do 6 shows a day. So doing 6 shows a day, they're 22 minutes long per se, but actual shooting, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm on my feet all day talking constantly to reading the questions, the prove outs, saying the answers, and we just roll. And it's grueling. It is brutal, I will say. It's just a lot of learning, a lot of repetition, learning how to keep things fresh, how to keep the stamina up and how to keep it live. How to keep it. Another thing that's interesting that a lot of times when I'm on tour or been doing movies, it's just interacting, believe it or not, and interacting with contestants to make them feel comfortable on the stage is where it really comes into play. Because some people, you get them and they get on stage and they're just kind of like deer in headlights, and they've never been on TV before. So you're like, first they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. They all, do the audition, whatever. They're all happy and stuff. And people are like, oh, you look great. The minute the camera hits, sometimes some people freeze. So my job there is to really relax them and to kind of calm them and kind of get them more comfortable. And I think that's what I do sometimes, especially on stage when you're having a problem in your hair, when you're talking to them, it's that connection.
Yeah, and you make it look easy, but of course it's been like decades of being in entertainment where you've been on TV so much, so you know how to respond. You have like an instinct that you build up, and you're a natural performer, so it makes that a little bit easier for you compared to other people who've never been on TV. I mean, I've been on TV and I've seen, the co-hosts of various shows like read teleprompters. Like I can't believe like doing that all day. Like some people are made for it and some people aren't.
Correct. It does fry your brain towards the end of the day. Like words just become words. There's no inflection in it sometimes. I mean, again, I ain't perfect. So towards the end of the day, it does get a little shaky. I will say that after the fifth show, it's like, what am I reading again? What is that pronouncing? How am I doing this? Because it's just like, it's so much. But yeah, it's a lot of patience, I think is what really taught me over the years. Patience.
Definitely. And what's your best piece of career advice?
Best piece of career advice. Study your craft. I always say study your craft. People are like, oh yeah, I can just do this. I'll go out there. No, here's the difference. Go to show, if you're an actor, say for instance, go to plays, obviously a little bit with COVID, a little bit different. Watch it on TV, but watch what people do. I learned this from my old drama teacher, my high school drama teacher, who taught myself, who taught Wayne Brady, a bunch of other people. When you're watching a show, you're always watching what to do, but watch what you shouldn't do as well. Watch both aspects. So if there's bad acting, okay, I shouldn't do that choice or I shouldn't do this. So perfect your craft, practice. Not, let's reach your goals, do that, wish luck, it's a combination of everything, I think. But I think, if you get the fundamentals down and really work on it, just like dancing, some people are not the greatest dancers, but they'll find a niche in something and they'll learn and practice really hard. And again, people see this and sometimes it does come quick to some people because it does happen sometimes overnight. But majority of the people have been perfecting their craft for years. And I don't think a lot of people understand that with certain people, especially with this whole age with social media where, you become a singer and they hear you like, oh my God, you're famous, and don't know nothing about how to deal with first of all, with fans in general, how to deal with social media, how to deal with all stuff. And over the years I've learned, but there was no social media training. It was weird because as back in the day, I know that like O-Town, a couple other groups had that kind of stuff. Us in Backstreet never had any training. It was, here's an interview, talk. And it was like, if you said something wrong, it was printed, So we learned the hard way by saying certain things that maybe, too more private or something stupid or something silly that we're like, oh, maybe we should have said that, So you learn.
Yeah, I agree. And, every day, every experience, every person you connect with, you can take something from, the good and the bad, and it compounds over time. And you start to realize what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you don't want to do as much of, where you want to focus. So I think over time, you kind of grew into where you are today, and you're still growing. You're not like, oh, I'm just going to call it a day after NSYNC. You're just, what's the next thing? How can I, challenge myself, more with the game show. You didn't think you would host a game show, when you were becoming a global phenomenon with NSYNC.
Right.
Like that wasn't on your agenda. It was probably not on your goal list, right?
But I did Dancing with the Stars. It really kind of opened up the doors for me to host stuff. And they asked me to host the TV Guide Network with TV Guide Red Carpet with Lisa Rinna. And I've never really worked with IFB in my ear that much. But having in-ears and listening to music and hearing sometimes the musical director say stuff, I'm able to pay attention to that, but keep going with what I'm doing. And that, I think, crossed over and helped me, because sometimes, again, another thing reading prompters is having an IFB here. When people are starting to talk and you're reading a prompter and they're telling you to go to commercial, you got to pick up all stuff. I don't know how the hell I do it, but I'm able to listen to that, talk to the person, and focus on what I'm doing at the same time. But yet I probably don't even remember what I ate for breakfast this morning. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy. The brain works so weird.
Totally. And I appreciate the conversation, and thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.